Assalamualaikum, my name is Arfat and welcome to a brand new video. In today's video, I'd like to ask a question. Perhaps this is something that has been brought up before, but I don't find any, and I think this has not been successfully answered by Christians. And so this is a question that I have. If you are familiar with the book of Revelation, this is Revelation chapter 14, in particularly verses 4 and 5. If you read verses 4 and 5, you have this conclusion or this picture, or a picture has been painted to you whereby women are not going to go to paradise. Women will not receive paradise. And this is something that the commentaries that I have here, which I'll show you, have not really explained or do not really take the time to explain this verse. In fact, they have just been glossed over, and so it has not been critically explained. Now, I've not looked at the hermeneia as well as the single volume commentary for this particular book of Revelation. Right, all I have here is a one volume commentary whereby there's a lot of the entire Bible is in this one volume commentary. Right, but I think the book of Revelation is something that is filled with a lot of mystery, filled with a lot of interpretation, and is very hard to understand. But for some reason, this passage is actually striking, or the idea that it paints a picture to the readers. So I'm going to read it from chapter 14, verses 1 all the way to 5. This is from the Catholic Study Bible, the New American Bible translation. Then I looked, and there was the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads. I heard a sound from heaven like the sound of rushing water, or a loud peal of thunder. The sound I heard was like that of a harpist playing their harps. They were singing, in brackets, what seemed to be a new hymn before the throne, before the four living creatures and the elders. No one could learn this hymn except the 144,000 who had been ransomed from earth. Right? These are they who were not defiled with woman. They are virgins, and these are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. Right? The Lamb here meaning Jesus. They have been ransomed as the first fruits of the human race for God and the Lamb. On their lips no deceit has been found. They are unblemished. In particularly striking, if you actually read this text critically, this paragraph critically, you will have the idea that those who have not been defiled with women, right, they are the ones who will actually be able to sing these hymns, like the harpist is playing, so on and so forth, from heaven. Meaning, what this means is that only this 144,000 will be able to enter heaven to join, because these are the people that actually are unblemished and they follow the Lamb. Right? And so, now, here you can interpret it in two ways, because it says that these are virgins and they have not been defiled with woman. Right? And so in this context here, if you look at the context of the first century, this is actually referring to men. Right? Even though in the Greco-Roman world, you do have a concept of man with man. Right? But this is man with woman. So men have not been defiled with woman. So it is referring to men. And only 144,000 men will enter heaven, because these 144,000 men, they have been chosen by because they follow the Lamb, so on and so forth, and they are unblemished and they have not been defiled with women. So only 144,000 will actually enter heaven, will receive paradise, will receive Jannah, according to the book of Revelation here. And so according to the book of Revelation, I will not say the Bible, according to the book of Revelation, in fact the Bible, because the book of Revelation is in the Bible. The Bible says, according to the book of Revelation, that woman will not enter paradise. Right? And so this is, if you read the text critically, this is the picture that you have. Now, for those of you who disagree with me, right, I now turn you to the conservative commentaries as well as study notes. Because if you reject this, this is actually quite liberal according to some of you. Okay. So we turn to the Moody Bible commentary. Right. This is page 2016. Page 2017. The sixth sign featured the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, a reference to a prophetic vision of the ultimate triumph of the Lamb following his second coming, when he joins the 144,000 on literal Mount Zion at the beginning of his millennial reign. In support of this understanding, the 144,000 were guaranteed preservation throughout the tribulation, with that preservation demonstrated here. Zion is typically understood as earthly Jerusalem. Even in the New Testament, okay, and he gives references, for example, Matthew 21:5, John 12:15, Romans 9:33, Romans 11:26, and 1 Peter 2:6. Hebrews 12:22 is the lone exception, but Hebrew 12:23 gives a clear indication of Zion, there being heavenly Zion. Finally, the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, verse 1, parallels the actions of some other major players in Revelation. For example, the dragon in 13:1, the beast out of the sea in 13:1, and the second beast out of the earth in 13:11. These are presumably the same group mentioned in Revelation 7 1 to 8. God's own mighty and melodic voice was heard, okay, along with various orders of angels. They sang a new song to God that only they were able to learn. These who bore the brunt of the horrors of the tribulation would be the special focus of his attention. They would enjoy special fellowship with him. The most likely meaning of not being defiled with women and keeping chaste is that they have not engaged in false worship. Okay. In the Old Testament, frequently Israel's idolatry was described as spiritual adultery. And this is in reference to Exodus 34:11 to 17, Numbers 25 1 to 9, and Hosea 1 2 as well as 2 2. The unflagging attention of these faithful servants was on the Lamb, whom they constantly followed around heaven. Their witness for Christ showed that they were also truth tellers, unlike some in the early church. Reference to Revelation 2:9 and 3:9. As first fruits, this is verse 4, their presence anticipated a great influx of Israelites into God's family during the Great Tribulation. And so here the Moody Bible interpret that this actually not defiled with women is actually adultery, right? And so here the Moody Bible is trying to explain away that actually this text not defiled with women doesn't actually refers to men not having intercourse with women, men not being virgins, right? And so this would actually remove the issue that women are not allowed to enter heaven according to this interpretation. But we're going to look at a different interpretation here and see what we get. And this is the Meot Bible commentary. and this is page 2020. A lamb. Okay. Mount Zion, the city of Jerusalem where Messiah will return and plant his feet. 144,000, the counterpart to the mark of the beast. It is the stamp that will identify the 144,000 as belonging to God. Okay, and then Hubs is asking us to see a note on 5.8. The new song, the song of redemption being sung by all the redeemed saints in one gigantic choir. They are rejoicing over the accomplishment of God's entire redemptive work before Christ's return. Okay. The four living creatures and the elders. Okay, this is also asking us to refer to notes on 4 and 6. Now 14.4 is our point of main focus here. Not defiled with women. And an illustration of God's ability to keep believers remarkably pure in the midst of great difficulty. This phrase indicates that the 144,000 Jewish evangelists will have not only resisted the perverse system of Antichrist, but they will also have resisted all temptations to illicit sex. Okay, and so here the the Meot Bible commentary actually opens it up, right? That this is actually not necessarily only referring to idolatry, so on and so forth, but it is also in reference to sexual intercourse, right? But here it falls short of actually acknowledging what the passage says and say that this is not necessarily meaning men not having illicit sex with women, but not having illicit sex only. Okay. Now the follow the Lamb. This indicates partnership for Jesus Christ. The victorious 144,000 are unwaveringly loyal to Him, whatever the cost. Okay. And so here we have the commentary here. And so we can look at other commentaries, but from here we concluded, and I have to say that the Moody Bible, I think it's much more accurate in the interpretation. Whereas, because we have a lot of references whereby this idolatry is also taken to be as part of fornication, spiritual fornication, right? However, I also agree with the Meot Bible commentary, whereby if we look at the text in itself, right, it doesn't seem to indicate that this is in reference to spiritual idolatry, because whilst the book of the Old Testament definitely talks about spiritual virginity, talk about all these kind of things, but the book of Revelation was written way centuries later in the Common Era, whereas all the texts of the Hebrew Bible were actually written before the Common Era. And so if we cannot look at the Bible cohesively and say just because we found these many themes in the Old Testament, whereas it is talking about spiritual virginity, meaning we can also apply this to the book of Revelation. All right. And so just because it happens in the Old Testament doesn't mean that it is actually a mirror of the New Testament. Now, even though we know that the New Testament authors actually have in their reference the Hebrew Bible, right, the Septuagint of the Hebrew Bible, but we also need strong points in the text to actually be able or to justify our linking to say that this is actually spiritual virginity and it is not talking about what it's meant to say in the passage, in the text. Now, one might say in contention that the book of Revelation has a lot of this imagery. It has a lot of these imageries and so forth, right? Like the book of Daniel, for example. Right? So it has a lot of this imagery And some people would say that the author of Revelation have access to the book of Daniel, so on and so forth, right? It could be, but we don't really know for sure, right? But however, the apocalyptic literature contains a lot of these imagery, so on and so forth. But there's nothing in this passage to actually indicate that this is actually in reference to some sort of imagery. Whereas if you look at the beast, so on and so forth, it does show that this is actually a form of imagery, like the dragons, and so forth, right? But here the text here is quite explicit, and also the text here is written in a way whereby it is not direct. Right? It is not directly saying that, oh, only men will go to paradise, women will not go to paradise. And so this text is indirectly trying to imply to the readers who read the text carefully, meaning the author of Revelation, he is quite smart actually. He is trying to say to his readers that only men who has not been defiled with women will actually enter paradise, will go to heaven. And so the author of Revelation here is not being explicit. In fact, it is his purpose to not be explicit. Right? And so this is something that is smart, if you want to read it into the text this way. But either way, the floor is open. I leave it to you to decide and take whatever opinion. But I think we have to read the text for what the text says. If it is explicit, then we can say that this is actually trying to mimic some form of imagery, so on and so forth. Right? But because the author of Revelation here is trying to outsmart, or has written his text in a way that is very smart, implicitly trying to inform his community that only men who has not been defiled with women will actually enter paradise. Now, whatever the background context here is none of our concern, because it will all be in conjecture, because we do not know whether the author of Revelation himself, called John, right, whether he himself was a virgin and so on and so forth, a celibate, for example, like Apostle Paul as well, right? Paul says that he doesn't need to get married, right? But if you want to get married, it's your choice. If you can't control your nafs, if you can't control your desire, all right? And so Paul, the author of Revelation, John, have some sort of same theological kind of grounding as Apostle Paul. Right? They're both from Asia Minor. But anyway, I'll leave it to you at that. But if you read the text here seems to suggest that only men who has not been defiled with women will enter paradise. And so this means that woman is out of the picture. Right? But there are many different readings to the text, and many different interpretations to the text, which I've just shown you two. Right? I can go on and show you 15 different books, and each with their own commentaries and things like that. But it would just be a waste of time, because the conclusions were almost the same, right? Scholarly consensus. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.